think my parents will take the upstairs. My sister and the kids can have the downstairs. It's only fair. You've got the space. That's what she said. Calm, polite, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. Her fork didn't even pause over the pie I had baked from scratch that morning. I blinked once, not in shock, just to make sure I'd heard correctly. Then I set my own fork down carefully. The edge of ceramic against ceramic made a soft clink that suddenly felt louder than her voice. "This is my home," I said, looking directly at her. Not a hostel. For a second, no one moved. The dining room was warm from the oven, filled with the smell of brown butter and late spring air drifting in through the screen door. The lake outside was glass still. I had lit candles, put out cloth napkins, even remembered that Sierra doesn't eat strawberries. I hadn't expected gratitude, but I hadn't expected this either. Evan's eyes stayed on his plate, his hands folded neatly in his lap like a schoolboy being scolded. He didn't look up, not once. Sierra smiled again, this time smaller, the corners of her mouth a little too tight. "It's just for a few weeks," she said lightly. "They've never had a lake house experience. And besides, you're not really using the whole place." I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew if I started speaking, I wouldn't stop. They finished dessert like nothing had happened. I cleared the plates alone while they lingered on the porch with coffee talking about summer travel plans. Their laughter drifted in and out through the screen door like smoke I didn't want in my lungs. When they left, I walked through the house slowly, closed each window, checked the locks twice, turned off the lights in rooms I used to imagine they'd help fill one day. I slept with the porch light on, not because I was afraid, just alert, like something had shifted in the floorboards under me. 7 days later, I saw the moving truck. I spent 40 years filing other people's memories, decades in the basement of a university library, dust clinging to my sleeves, gloves soft from wear, manuscripts, letters, photographs, people's stories kept in order. That was my job. Quiet work, patient work. I liked it. No one interrupted. No one needed explanations. When my husband died, Evan was 12. There was no time to collapse. I made a schedule. I packed lunches. I paid bills on time. His grief sat beside mine at the table. And we got through it the only way we could, without drama, without breakdowns. I never remarried, not out of bitterness, just practicality. I didn't want to split my attention or my time or my savings. I took on more hours, moved us into a smaller apartment, bought used clothes, skipped vacations, and told Evan yes whenever I could afford to. I put a little aside each month. It wasn't much, not at first. But over time, that little grew. I didn't dream of cruises or resorts. I dreamed of a place where no one would need anything from me, just space and light and water. Somewhere quiet enough to finally hear my own thoughts. When Evan got his first apartment, I gave him the deposit. When he and Sierra got engaged, I paid for the dress after her mother said no. No one asked me to, I just did it. They always said thank you kindly, politely, like a reflex, and I never asked for anything back. I didn't want a grandchild named after me. I didn't want birthday parades or brunches in my honor. I just wanted when the time came to be left in peace. That's all. When I found the listing for this house, I drove up alone, paid in full with the cashier's check I'd carried folded in my coat pocket. I remember the way the doorknob turned that first time. The way the windows let the light spill straight through the kitchen sink. It felt like a reward, and for one whole year it was. The quiet, the lake, the smell of trees. I finally stopped checking my email first thing in the morning. Then came Sierra's smile. And 7 days after that, the truck was white, loud, and unapologetic. It rolled up my gravel driveway like it belonged there, tires crunching, slow and confident. I was standing at the sink. When I saw it through the window, my hands still wet from rinsing a cup. For a moment, I thought I was mistaken. Delivery, maybe, wrong address. Then Sierra stepped out. She wore sunglasses and held a clipboard against her chest. Not luggage, not a weekend bag, a clipboard. Behind her came her parents, her sister, and the 2 children I'd met once at a birthday party, and never again. Plastic bins started appearing from the back of the truck like a magician's trick that wouldn't end. I didn't move. I stood at the window and watched them organize themselves on my lawn. Sierra pointed toward the house, speaking with the calm efficiency of someone directing movers she'd hired. Her father laughed at something. One of the kids ran ahead and smacked both palms against my front door. No one knocked. They walked toward the porch like it was a return, not an arrival, like they were coming back to a place they already owned. My body reacted before my mind did. I crossed the room and turned the deadbolt, then the second lock. My fingers were steady. That surprised me more than anything. The The banging started seconds later. Corvina Sierra's voice bright and strained. "We're here." I didn't answer. The handle rattled. The banging grew louder, flat palms against wood. One of the children started crying. Someone cursed. Sierra's voice changed, lost its sweetness. "Open the door, don't be ridiculous." I walked to the small table by the phone and dialed the sheriff's office. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like it belonged to someone reporting a weather update. "There are people attempting to force entry into my home," I said. "Yes, I'm inside. I'm alone." The banging continued. The truck engine idled. Gravel shifted under restless feet. I sat in the chair and folded my hands in my lap, listening to the noise without letting it enter me. When the patrol cars arrived, the silence that followed was almost delicate. Voices outside sharp and official. Sierra protesting, her father arguing. The children confused and loud, doors closing, engines restarting. By sunset, the driveway was empty again. I locked the door once more, even though it was already locked. And then her post was everywhere. It took 2 days. I hadn't heard from Evan. Not a call, not a message. I thought maybe they'd realized what they'd done, or at least decided to let things cool off. But then I opened my laptop and saw Sierra's name tagged in a post that had already gathered over 100 comments. My mother-in-law locked our children out of her house. They were crying on the porch. She called the cops on her own family. We came in peace and she treated us like criminals. A bitter, lonely woman with too many rules and no heart. The words didn't sting so much as settle. Like dust you didn't see until sunlight hit the window just right. A photo was attached, one of her kids sitting on a plastic bin at the edge of the lawn. Cropped tight so you couldn't see the truck or the others unloading or her father shouting when the deputies told him to step back. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. "That's awful. Some people shouldn't be allowed near children. You poor thing. I can't imagine." Someone from town messaged me. "Are you all right? I saw something online. Do you need groceries or anything?" I didn't reply, but I did scroll far enough to see a name. I recognized Marlene from the post office. A woman who always double-knotted her scarf and folded envelopes like they were origami. She had commented under the thread. "I was there. I saw what happened. They weren't guests. They were yelling. They didn't knock. They tried to open the door without permission. That wasn't a visit. That was an invasion, just that plain unemotional. It didn't go viral. It didn't get likes, but it stayed." I bookmarked the comment. Then I closed the laptop and pushed it across the table. That night I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I went to the back room, the one I hadn't touched since moving in. It faced the lake. The wallpaper peeled near the window, and the closet still smelled faintly of paint. I opened the door and reached for the tool set tucked behind an old suitcase. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. The next morning, I wrote a list on the back of an envelope and taped it to the fridge. The list stayed on the fridge and I crossed off one line at a time. Paint done. Window frame stripped, sanded, sealed. Closet cleared. Sheets washed, line dried, folded crisp. Mattress new firm, affordable, delivered quietly on a Tuesday morning. It took 10 days, not because it was complicated, but because I did it alone. I liked the rhythm of it. Brush, rinse, repeat. I moved slow, steady. Some days I didn't say a single word out loud until nightfall, and somehow that felt like healing. The guest room had never been used. It was just a place where boxes lived, old books, winter coats, 2 broken lamps I never got around to tossing. But by the time I hung the plain curtains and set a folded towel on the end of the bed, the space had changed. Not just cleaned, claimed. I made the listing private. No wide open-end calendar, no promotional rates. I wrote the description myself. Quiet lakeside home, 1 guest room, max 2 adults. No children, no pets, no parties, no extended stays. This is a space for rest. If you are not looking for rest, do not book. The first request came from a ceramicist traveling down from Maine. She messaged politely, asked about the light in the mornings and whether she could bring her own kettle. I accepted. She stayed 2 nights, kept to herself, wrote a thank you note on the back of a postcard, and left behind a small blue teacup with a chip in the rim. I placed it on the windowsill. The second guest was a retired professor. He read on the porch for hours, brought his own slippers, took out his trash without being asked. On his last morning, he left me a wrapped chocolate bar and a note that said, "Peace lives here." I found myself standing in the hallway after he left, just breathing, not waiting for a knock or a demand or a question, just standing in a house that felt finally like mine again. That evening, I sat with my tea and reread the listing. I didn't change a word. I just added 1 new sentence. This home is not available for family stays. The next afternoon, Evan showed up at my door alone. He didn't knock right away. I saw his car first parked at the end of the drive like he wasn't sure he should be here. He sat inside for a few minutes, then the door opened slow. Just him. No Sierra, no kids, no clipboard. When he finally walked up the steps, I was already waiting at the screen door. "Hi, Mom," he said like he always did. Soft, like nothing had changed. I opened the door and stepped aside. Not a word yet, just space. We sat in the living room. He didn't touch the chair Sierra had used last time. He sat on the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he expected it to open. "I just wanted to check in," he started. Things got out of hand. I waited. Sierra, she meant well. She didn't think it would go like that. I think she was just trying to make things easier for her family. "Easier for them," I said quietly. "Not for me." He nodded, but not like he agreed, more like he didn't want to argue. "I was surprised you called the police. I was surprised I needed to." He exhaled, ran a hand through his hair. "Is there a way back from this?" That's when I asked it. Not loud, not sharp, just enough to make the air shift. "Why didn't you speak?" He blinked, then shrugged. "I don't know. I didn't want to make things worse." "You didn't want to make them worse for her," I said. "But you didn't think about what staying silent did to me." Still no answer. Just that same drop in his shoulders I used to see when he forgot a homework assignment. The weight of not knowing what to say. Only now he was a grown man, and this silence was a choice. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I pointed out toward the lake where the light was starting to break across the water. "I bought this house with no help," I said. "I've spent my life giving. You never asked what I wanted." He sat there a few minutes longer, said nothing else. When he left, he didn't hug me, didn't promise to call, just walked back to the car, got in and drove away. 3 days later, I got a booking request from a woman named Neen. Neen's message came in short, careful sentences. She was 66, recently widowed. This would be her first trip alone since her husband passed. She said she wasn't looking for adventure, just stillness, a place with no expectations. I accepted without hesitation. She arrived on a Thursday carrying a single suitcase and a tote bag filled with books. Her voice was gentle, her movement slow but sure. She didn't ask for anything except where to find the tea. The second morning, I found her on the back porch just after sunrise, already steeping chamomile in one of the mugs I kept in the cupboard. I made my own cup, and we sat quietly for a while before she spoke. "This house," she said, looking out toward the lake, "has a kindness to it." I didn't answer right away, just let her words rest in the air between us. It wasn't a compliment. It felt like a recognition. "I'm glad it feels that way," I said finally. She smiled but didn't push for more. We talked for a while, nothing too deep. How long we'd both been married. What it felt like to live with only your own voice in the room. She told me her husband had always wanted to visit Vermont, but never made the time. She came here because she thought maybe she could bring a small part of him with her. When she left 2 days later, she folded the blankets neatly at the foot of the bed and left a single sunflower in a glass jar on the nightstand. No note, just the flower. After she pulled out of the driveway, I walked to the dock and sat with my legs tucked under me, letting the boards press into the backs of my calves. I thought about all the times I'd held my tongue, all the rooms I'd stepped out of quietly just to keep the peace. How that silence had protected everyone except me. That night, I opened the listing and added a single line to the description. "This house is a place of rest. Please enter with respect." 2 nights later, Sierra posted again. The second post came late at night. I only saw it because a neighbor forwarded it with a short note I thought you should know. Sierra's words were angrier this time, less polished. She's renting out the house now to strangers, taking money from people she's never met. Meanwhile, the family she should be helping gets treated like outsiders. This is the house my husband is supposed to inherit one day. There it was again, that quiet entitlement dressed up like hurt. I didn't comment. I didn't call Evan. I didn't open my mouth to defend what never belonged to them in the first place, but someone else did. Underneath the post, I saw a familiar name, Marlene again. Her tone hadn't changed. It's not his house, it's hers. She bought it, she maintains it. And maybe she's finally choosing peace over guilt. About time. No argument followed, no flood of defense, just a long silence. By morning, Sierra's account was gone. Evan didn't return, no knock at the door, no explanation. Whatever conversation he might have been planning died quietly like a phone that rings once and stops before you can answer. I mailed him a birthday card anyway. No message inside, just my name in pen. The same handwriting I'd used on his permission slips his lunchbox notes his first apartment lease. That same week, I received a booking request from a couple in their early 40s. They said they'd been following the listing for months. They weren't looking for a vacation, just a quiet space to elope. No guests, no ceremony, just them, a vow and stillness. They arrived with 2 small suitcases and a bundle of fresh lilacs wrapped in brown paper. Left a single note on the kitchen table before they checked out. "Thank you for giving us a place of clarity." I left the lilacs in the vase, watered them each morning until they dried at the edges. The house stayed quiet, no banging on the door. No accusations, no performances, just the sound of floorboards and wind and a home that had finally learned how to breathe again. As summer folded into stillness, I found myself adding one more thing to the front step. The lake changed with the season. By early September, the light hit the water differently, less playful, more deliberate. The wind came in low and steady like it had somewhere to be. One morning, I watched a heron glide down near the reeds and stand perfectly still. I stayed just as still a matching shadow on the porch. The guest room remained quiet between visits. I didn't accept many, just a few each month, always spaced out. No one stayed longer than 3 nights. No one asked to. That was the beauty of it. Every guest came with respect, already packed in their bags. Some left tokens. A poem handwritten on thick cream paper folded into thirds and tucked beneath the lamp. A tiny stitched coaster, initials in the corner, made by a woman who hadn't picked up a needle in 20 years. A single gardenia left on the pillow, still wet from the morning's dew. Not one of them asked about the family photos missing from the hallway or the extra lock on the inside of the front door. They didn't need to. The house told its own story now. I never spoke Sierra's name again, not out of spite, out of clarity. She had taken enough air. I didn't owe her my voice, too. Evan never wrote back, never called. And yet I wasn't waiting. Some silences asked for patience, others asked to be left alone. I tended my routines, I made soup. I walked the edge of the lake when my knees allowed it. I read again for hours at a time, not to escape, but to stay. One evening, as the sky darkened earlier than it had in weeks, I took a small wooden plank from the shed, sanded it down, painted it soft gray. The next morning, I nailed it beside the front door. Not a warning, just a truth. All it said was private by invitation only. I stepped back, wiped the dust from my hands, and let the quiet settle around me again.